All right, so we are live. Good evening, y'all. We passed it. And the it is obviously that big COVID word, right? Couldn't wait for it to be past COVID. So, of course, once society, right? I'll just call society, right? Once society starts saying, hey, yeah, we're moving past this, this pandemic. Like, we're not, we're brushing our shoulders off with this pandemic. And then the mask, went away, especially shout out to that Florida judge. And I'm in the state of Florida, so before someone jumps in and be like, "Oh, don't get on Florida," I'm from the state of Florida, and I shit on Florida as often as I can. And when that Florida federal judge says, "Hey, yeah, they don't need to wear masks in like federal buildings and federal transportation related stuff," this was when we were talking about the airplanes, and it just kind of trickled down everywhere else. I knew it kind of spelt the end as far as, oh yeah. They're really ready to go. Like, they're really ready to move on and leave this in the back. Even though the cases were still there, the deaths were still there. In fact, I was just looking at CDC just so we can get some updated numbers, because I know you guys like the updated numbers. Looks at just the total cases just this week, especially because a lot of places aren't really tracking it down anymore. We had 101,000 new COVID cases this week. We had 1,300 deaths this week. We had 1,800 hospital admissions this week. So just so we can kind of get a nice little foundation. So kind of proceeding. So we had this physician who is a pediatrician who says, yeah, I don't wear masks for lots of different reasons. Mention the CDC, mention being uncomfortable, mention, low, transmission rates in the area, kind of based on the CDC. Just so a lot of things were focused on, hey, you know what? The numbers are better. The CDC says these are the new recommendations, and this is what I'm doing. And what I like, right? What I do like, right? So let's give the olive branch where the olive branch is due. He mentions that he asks his patients, like, hey, if you want people to still wear this mask, we'll wear the mask, right? And by will, meaning me, meaning my MA. Like, we'll still wear the mask. Hey, how you doing? But if you don't want us to wear a mask, we ain't gonna wear the mask. Because, our default is we not wearing the mask until you tell us to wear the mask. Now, I got some questions, right? Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I got some questions. Now, full backstory. For those that don't know, I'm an internist, which means I take care of adult patients. And I work in several settings. I work in the acute care hospital setting. That's where, if you call 911, got a heart attack or something, that's where you go. I work in the long-term care hospital setting. That means that if you are too healthy to still be in the acute care side, but you still need long-term care, like wound care, respiratory care, long-term antibiotic, something in that regards, I work there too. I'm a medical director at 2 different rehab facilities, meaning that, after you're done, let's say, you fall, let's say, you get your hip replaced and you got to go to rehab to get stronger before you go home. I work there too, right? So I work in several different facets of the post-acute care, right? And just medicine in general from an inpatient perspective. So I've seen patients, and I continue to see patients at all these different levels. And at least for me, right? I'm in Florida. All the places I wear masks, right? I can't even fathom a position where I would work in a hospital setting now without wearing a mask. Now, again, mind you, I feel comfortable with masks. Mind you, they're the cloth masks. They're not N95 masks, right? So this, just for full disclosure, they're not like the N95 masks, but I just like wearing the mask. I like the covering. I like the protection. And I do have patients where if there's some issues where maybe they can't hear me, I stand a good distance, I'll take it off, I talk, and then I put it back on. So I'm cool with that. I'm not one of these people who are like, oh, I'm suffocating because I'm wearing a mask. Not one of those people. Even if I have to wear N95, I could rock N95 all day because I could just do that. So you have this physician who says, hey, I'm not wearing my mask by default unless a patient tells me to wear the mask. And I think that's okay, right? This is the physician. I think it's okay. Right? I'm comfortable, and I'm unfortunately I think what messed it up is the physician essentially says, yeah, I'm just tired of wearing the N95 mask. I'm tired of it, like that. So already I'm like, oh, that's not gonna go good. Already I'm like, oh, that's not gonna go good, because what you're essentially saying is it's not because my patient census is, very, and it's it's a kids pediatric office, right? So it's not like the kids are all super healthy and everything else. Like, no, I'm personally just tired of wearing it. Now, let me tell you a backstory. When I was a medical student, and as a medical student, you have to go through multiple rotations. And the sickest I've ever been was during my pediatric rotation. Like, I don't know what these kids be carrying. I don't know what they be carrying. But whatever bugs they carry, those super bugs that they carry, that's something that I want no business being around. Because it was for the first time I had bronchitis, for the first time I had to have inhaler. Like, it was so bad. Like, my pediatric attending sent me home. Like, because I was just, I was doing the cough thing, and he's like, are you okay? I was like, I don't know what it is. Like, he said, hey, you know what? I'm writing a prescription for some steroids and inhalers. Take that. See me in a few days. Like, it was that bad. So I can only imagine what it's like being in what I would call the petri dish of a rotation, like pediatrics, and being like, nah, I'm cool. I'm cool with that. And I got kids as well. And I tell my wife all the time, like, I deal with adult illnesses all day, every day. Whenever my kids get a runny nose or something, I eventually get sick. So these kids carry the type of germs that there's no way that I would be like cool, right, just running into. But he's like, nah, He said, I'm okay with that. And honestly, I'm just tired of wearing masks. I don't want to deal with it. I'm like, nah, I'm just tired of wearing a mask. So, of course, right, there's a lot of people who are reacting to it. There are a lot of people who react to it because they're like, look at someone in the healthcare setting who, unfortunately, right, and it isn't thinking necessarily for the patient per se, but thinking specifically for themselves, right? If they would have said, hey, I don't wear the mask because none of my patients want me to do it. My patients are like, okay, that maybe get a little grace. You still got to, you probably still get a little pushback. But once you center yourself and say, no, I don't wear a mask, I'm just tired of it, right? You're going to feel the pushback, right? And if you go look at his page, there's a lot of pushback, right? There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of people being tagged. There's a lot of stitches happening. I'm almost sure of it. I'm almost sure the type of reaction he's getting, he was not expecting to get. Because obviously, again, I just read the numbers. We're still dealing with COVID. We're still dealing with COVID deaths. We know how COVID affects children. We know the incidence of vaccination and boosting, and how the percentages are lower for kids or those who are eligible for it. We know all of these factors here. So why would we want to add stoke to the fire? Now, again, remember, I'm just talking about the healthcare setting. If you're one who is like, hey, you know what? I'm about to go to Publix. I'm about to do this. I've done all the things I need to do. I've gotten vaccinated. I've gotten boosted. I've gotten boosted again. I just want to go get some eggs. Okay. You know what? That's a decision you make, and that's a decision that you make with, the people who go to the grocery store with you. But when you're in a situation where the healthcare facility, where you're going to be, obviously, yes, you're going to deal with some healthy people, some wellness visits, but you're going to deal with some sick visits as well. When you're dealing with that, when you're kind of dealing with that, you almost have to kind of step aside yourself, say, okay, you know what? Nah, I ain't gonna do that. I gotta do something different. And to be like, no, I don't wear no mask. I am good whatsoever. And he mentioned this aspect, especially with kids, right? And this was one of the talking points early with masking, right? Especially with masking in kids, is that they say, well, kids go through this developmental period where they need to see your face. And if they don't do that, then there's some less development. Now, again, right? Like I said, I take my mask off in front of my patients, especially if they can't hear me or there's some impediment. But So you can step back, pull it off, do all the facial expression, like you can still have it, but to let that be an anchor, it's difficult for me to rock, right? It's difficult for me to be like, yeah, okay, I see. Yes, the kid needs to see your face. Like it's difficult for me. Now, mind you, there are probably, especially in this past 3 years, there are probably people who in fact, not probably, I'm almost sure there are people who I've taken care of who have no clue that I was the one taking care of them. Like all they know is this, right? Like all they know is that they see the eyes, right? They see some glasses, right? Like they probably have no clue that I was the one taking care of them. And what can I do, right? Like it was part of the job. You just had to do what you had to do. But to kind of see that separation of, yeah, I just don't feel like wearing the mask like that. That's tough, right? That's gonna be tough for me to argue for, right? Like, and again, obviously, y'all know me. I don't like getting on my fellow colleagues if I don't have to. But obviously, I'm here for the patient, right? So I have to understand. All right, why or how could a patient of mine be upset seeing something like this? Because now, right, you see a pediatrician who does that. Now, if Dr. Pierre says like, hey, you should be wearing a mask. Like, hey, nah, I seen a pediatrician. I seen a pediatrician talking about they don't wear a mask. So why are you telling me to wear a mask, right? So now it just makes the job so much harder for us, especially when you just look outside, you look on TV. And if you're still dealing with it, still trying to protect yourself, and you see all these people who are literally acting like yeah, let's just move on, even though 100,000 new people got COVID this week, just this week, 100,000 new people, even though again, I think what was it, 1,300 people died this week from COVID, like even though all of these things still occur, hey everybody, that's what's so tough, right? So, and again, right? And it's just one of those things where now those who are already against it, right? The social distancing, the wearing the mask, and in the settings that they wear it in, that's just more evidence to say, oh yeah, see, we got someone else, right? We got someone else on our side said they don't even wear masks when they take care of the kids, which again, obviously, I'm not that person. I'm not that doctor. I just think it's wild to me. It's just wild to me. Now, like, mind you, if I go take my kids to a doctor's appointment right now, if that's not an option, I'm gonna be like, oh, hey, can they wear masks? Like, it just has to be. Like, we're just living in a new time, right? And again, I know for some people they hate the mask, they hate what it represents. They hate the quote unquote restrictions from it. But I just think that, like, especially right now when we talk about cold and flu season, this is, mind you, like COVID here, boom, right? We got COVID. COVID boogeyman's behind me. But it's still cold and flu season. Because I saw someone ask, like, why do I wear the cloth mask? It's because cold and flu season is still cold and flu season, right? And guess what does a great job, slowing down the spread of cold and flu? The mask. So even if I don't have that N95 mask, and I know that, N95 protects it, let's say 90%, we'll just give a number, 90%. I know that cloth mask is going to do enough to at least slow some things down. So, I don't get the flu, right? I don't get this. I don't like there's still a lot of things to protect yourself that doesn't necessarily have to be COVID. And I think we have so centered ourselves into thinking that the masks are only about COVID, that we just kind of forget about everything else, right? And again, like I said, you look on the TV, you look outside, and people are just kind of, people have just moved on, right? You understand people have just kind of moved on and say, yeah, I'm done with this. Like, I'm out of here. Like that. But like, the pandemic has passed. We're moving on with our life, which obviously is a very privileged position to be in, right? Because we had a million and what's our total death numbers? 1.1, right? 1.1 million people in the span of 3+ years died from COVID, right? Like, so it's very privileged to be like, let's just move on. right? And that 1.1 million people died. That doesn't include all of the people who are permanently disabled from COVID still living. And if you don't know who those are, just search long COVID here, right? And you'll find a lot of them. You'll find a lot of them on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You're going to find them all there too. So it's just one of those things where like it's tough. It's tough because you're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, again, if you don't want to wear the mask, cool, rock out. But to be so, like, what I would have loved that doc to do is to act like they don't see the mess. Like, just act like he should have been like, all right, man, you know what? I know that the way I want to answer this is not gonna flow well. So let me just act like I don't see the message, right? Like, if you're gonna go, to provide the support needed for others to say, oh yeah, yep, see this, boom, I knew it. Get the mask out of here. The mask is gone. Like that's what it's there for. Like I think that's what's so crazy about it, right? Let me make sure I didn't miss any, because I know we had a whole bunch of posts earlier today. Yes, and Shark Beat says, shout out to Shark Beat, says it's safer for everyone if we reduce the spread even a bit. That's the thing. It's like, again, I know even if you wear the N95 mask, even if you wear the KN95s, even if you wear just a cloth mask, like, I understand that you're not going to stop 100% of the spread. Like, you are not going to be the person who stops 100% spread. I understand that. But if you could just, if you could maybe not pass it to one person, right? And that one person not pass it to one, we're just asking for the little baby steps there, right? like that's all we're asking for. So someone asked, is there a reason why you offer cloth? Yeah, no, the reason why I offer cloth typically is more for just the fact that, like, when I grab usually especially in the front offices of most of the places I go, that's the first thing they have. I'm like, oh, N95. Like, if they had an N95 mask sitting in the front for us, it'd be the first thing I grab. Especially in the more of the rehab setting, I have more COVID patients. In acute care setting, because I only do that once a month, pretty much. And it's interesting because I was actually just working past this past weekend, and I didn't have a COVID patient, which is very good, right? I didn't have a single patient who had COVID, which is, in fact, is very good. And I saw a lot of patients last week, which is a very good sign especially from a hospitalization standpoint. And again, it's one of those things where, despite what our governor says, we are, we've tried to do a good job getting vaccinated, getting boosted, trying to protect. Like, we try to do kind of the quote unquote bare minimum stuff in that regard. So I think that's why it's led to less hospitalizations. But I'm also not a big fan. And the pediatrician mentioned it, where he was like, oh, the CDC, says my county levels are low. First of all, like especially if you're in Florida, you already know the numbers that they put out there are going to be falsely lower anyways, right? Because a lot of places, especially like Florida, just stop sending their information, right? So they can, like, even though I've read, 101,000 new cases, 1,300 deaths, I know that number is actually, the real number is more higher, because you have states like Florida who are like, nah, we're not sending those numbers no more. And unfortunately with the CDC can only use the data that is given. So if I'm not giving you the total number of cases in a specific county and the total number of cases in the deaths in a specific county, you can't then turn around and say whether the COVID alert level should be low, medium, or high, right? Like, you can't do that because your numbers are faulty, right? Like, bad numbers in, bad numbers out. That's like I had an MPH, so that's what we always said: bad numbers in, bad numbers out. So we've been given bad numbers, especially from a COVID perspective, for a good while, especially from Florida. So whenever time I see those numbers, I'm like, that's not good. And then, especially because of the time frame we're in, because we are towards the tail end of cold and flu season. Flu season ends in April. Because we're at the tail end, we're also going to be at the tail end of our cases as well. So if you looked at the past, 2-3 years, it was pretty much since COVID been here. I'm like 2-3 years since COVID is here. We typically see this tail off occur, March, April, May, June, and then you start seeing, they start climbing back up, and then, summer and everything else, right? So it's not even a surprise to me that less cases are around, because this is typically when I would see less cases, right? Like, because you're going to see less flu cases, you're going to see less respiratory cases in general. So you're going to see kind of this downtrend effect happen, especially around, again, March, April, like especially around like May and June. That's usually the lull before it starts doing one of those things again. So again, like I said, I can't do it, right? If I was working with kids, like I would just, like, my default would be wearing the mask until someone says, hey, you don't have to wear the mask, right? And if I'm thirsty to take my mask off, I'm like, oh, great, thank you. Whew. But if I'm not thirsty, I'm like, oh, that's okay, that's cool. Someone says no children's book. No, this book, right? Someone asked, they noticed it. I'm not an author. This is actually my wife and my daughter's book. My oldest daughter is autistic. My wife's autistic too. My wife's autistic, my daughter's autistic, and my son is autistic as well. So they have like a coloring book. It is Express Yourself Feeling. My wife is the CEO of Autism in Black, which we could probably have a whole discussion on that, probably next week. Just, MMR vaccine, autism, whatever. It's Autism Awareness Month too. So shout out to the Autism Awareness. And she actually my wife has her conference coming up at the end of this month as well too. In fact, I think link might be in my bio. Yeah, link might be actually in my bio for that, right? But yeah, so this is her book, it's not mine. Let's see. Yeah, someone said I got the flu during my pee rotation. Yeah, the kids be sick, right? The kids, like I said, I don't know what these kids be having. I don't know what they be having, but they got some illnesses with them. And I have 3. So the second one of my kids gets sick, it's like a countdown in our house. We're like, oh, Davis is sick. Oh, me and my wife. That's how we do. Because we already know what that means. When David's gonna get sick, then his twin sister's gonna get sick because they're twins. Then my oldest gonna get sick, and then they're gonna get their sickness is gonna might take them out for half a day or something like that. When it gets to me and my wife, we're knocked out for like a day and a half, right? So kids germs is a different germs, right? And again, I don't know, maybe you built some immune system because you're a pediatrician, right? Maybe it's a possibility. I don't know, but I think it's kind of wild from that perspective. Let me see. I know a family their son got COVID from PE's office. Oh yeah, most definitely. Like, because especially, and I saw someone's video because they were going like I said, I feel bad for him, right? Again, I've never seen this person on my timeline, so I don't know how much TikToking they be doing, but I'm pretty sure they're in a lot of people's feeds right now. And I saw someone do a stitch to his video, and I forget her name, but she was killing him. I was like, ooh. Yeah, she was killing him. She was like, as a doctor, she was one of those. She was doing what is that? The ether, right? Like she would say a statement, and I said, "That's a doctor." Boom, 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 boom. That's a doctor. Boom, 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 boom. If you're on here, shout out to you. She was just, she was killing him. I felt bad for him. But yeah, she, we talked about a family, kids. Especially with COVID, we already know how COVID is asymptomatic, right? We already know how, we already know how these dirty kids be, right? You know how these kids be dirty. These kids will, like, touch this, touch that. Like, I saw my daughter the other day, right? She dropped the cookie on the ground, right? And then she counted out loud, and before it got to 5, she picked it up and ate it. She said 5-second rule. I don't know who even, I thought that was an old person rule. I didn't even know these kids knew about the 5-second rule. But she counted out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ate it. Beat the 5-second rule. Like, this is what kids do. Y'all remember when y'all were kids. Y'all remember that. Like, so, yeah, just a wild thing for me to see. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I like this. Let me make sure to pin this. He acted like people have to be grateful because they wore the mask for so long. That's what they now and the way people, and especially in the healthcare setting, act like this was a long time to be wearing a mask. Like, we have whole professions that wear masks every single day. Every single day they wear a mask. Like, that's what they do every single day. Before COVID, it was the flu. We were wearing masks. Some of us, right? I know I was. We were wearing masks. Like, it was, yeah, like, it was just bad. Like, it was just, I tell you. Let me see here. Oh, let's see. I don't want to make sure we don't miss anything. Yep. And whoever got sick, we're definitely wishing them a speedy recovery. Okay. I appreciate it. Jersey Girl Bop says, I learned so much here on TikTok. Professionals have been so generous with their time. Yeah, no, that's what it is, man. It's one of the things I love about TikTok. One of the things I love about TikTok is just how open you can be, right? And relaxed you could be with just kind of your community, right? Whatever your community is, and you could just be, you're just shooting the breeze. You're just shooting the breeze, and you're able to educate. You're able to have fun. You're able to crack jokes. You're able to do all of these things there. Because the community of people who kind of watch you, right? So you do kind of have to set an example for them. I ever took my mask off last week for the first time, 103 fever yesterday. Yeah, especially 103 fever. Obviously, I know I meant to do a report on the this new variant that's been popping up, but yeah, and remember, fever's still here, right? Like, again, I say it all the time, and I feel like I'm the biggest spokesperson for the flu, right? But like, if you like just do a Google search for me and flu, I've been talking about the flu just as much as I've been talking about COVID, because before COVID, it was the flu that used to fill up my hospitals, right? From probably like November to like around Easter time, right? The flu used to be like, that was, ugh. And I used to just, because I know a lot, again, I not a lot of people, right? Like those who on the other side who feel, right? Like you see, I'm vaccinated, right? Who feel that the only reason why I'm talking about this COVID vaccine is somehow a plant for Moderna and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and Novartis and AstraZeneca and all these other, like they felt like I was a plant. I'm like, no. I've been wanting y'all to get vaccinated for as long as I've been talking about the flu, right? Because I saw what the flu does, right? Oh, I saw what the flu did over and over and over to people. So when I think about, hey man, like don't forget. I know COVID's that hot. I know that COVID's the hot topic right now, but don't forget about the flu. And that's why you see, I think our flu numbers from a CDC standpoint, shout out to CDC again. Do what you gotta do. The estimates from the flu deaths are going to be, they said roughly between 18 to 55,000 people should die from the flu this cold and flu season. Do you think it's worth writing to my doctor's office about how they went mass optional? Yeah, I think it was. I mean, but like, especially kind of following what this pediatrician, and I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch of others like this pediatrician. You have so many people, because mind you, right? They went mask optional, right? Obviously, they're not going to tell you if they're vaccinated or not, right? That's a whole nother discussion. So they just like, yeah, no, back to business, right? And, at your risk. It would be great if these outpatient practices were at least giving patients the option, like, hey, like, if you want to come here, we'll wear a mask for you. Just let us know. Yeah, I used to not fear flu now because after COVID, anybody feels. Oh yeah, indeed. COVID has definitely supplanted, just that feeling of what could be or what could be, and now, right, it's become a default, right? Whereas you get a little sick, you're like, all right, let me check, make sure I don't got COVID, right? No one says, let me check to make sure I don't got the flu no more. Like that's not even a phrase that people even think of. Like you be in a hospital setting, people are not even trying to rule out. They're not even trying to rule out, like, oh, maybe it's the flu. Right now they do. Right now it's like, all right, let me get the COVID, flu, RSV panel. Like, let me just check you for all of that, just in case you got it. But the first thing is definitely, oh man, let me make sure it's not COVID. Right? Like, it's just extremely tough from that standpoint there. Let's see. Make sure. Yeah, no, that's the thing too. I love that point, right? Public health isn't political. They were where we met our demise. Yeah, that really was the killer. When because obviously public health has been one of those things that it's been that cool kid that nobody knew was cool until you like invited him to the party, right? Like people didn't realize just how significant having good public health structure was around you until they realized we don't have a good public health structure around us. Like once people realize like, oh, like we're not prepared for that. Like we have to do an emergency response. Like when you think about it, a lot of the emergency response and things we had to do, the reason why we had to do it from an emergency related standpoint is because we didn't have it foundationally already there as the standard. So because it wasn't the standard to be able to mobilize, to be able to diagnose, because that wasn't the standard across the country, you didn't have to do this emergency proclamation to make it easier for counties and cities and states to be able to mobilize, to be able to test for COVID everywhere, to be able to diagnose and treat for COVID everywhere. You have to make it an emergency response because our public health structure is that bad. Because if it wasn't that bad, it'd be like, all right, hey guys, it's go time. Like you've been preparing for this, but there was nothing to prepare for because we never prepared for it because of funding and everything else that became political. And then once it became an issue where talking about social distancing was a political thing, talking about vaccination, which has never been a political thing, became a political thing. Like once that became the issue, like you just had this divide. You just had this divide. So that people thought that we were having, like, especially those on the other side, thought it was like a landmark decision when a federal judge says, hey, you don't have to wear a mask no more. Like for them, that was like when they got rid of Roe v. Wade, right? Like for them, I was like, yes, we don't have to wear a mask. Like that's how excited like they got. Right, which is crazy because it was a public health issue. And because of that public health issue, you guys are jumping up and down. Right, so it's, extremely tough. Like, just extremely tough, especially in this country here. And what's had to occur is that those in the most vulnerable positions have had to learn to adjust. Like imagine, right, those who are in the most vulnerable positions having to adjust around everyone else instead of us adjusting around those in the most vulnerable positions. Like that is probably the most mind-boggling thing, that when historians read about our response and, you know, in 50 years, 100 years, whatever, they're going to be like, you mean to tell me there are people who are fighting, right, to get that respiratory virus? You mean to tell me there are people who are protesting because they had to wear a mask? Like, they're not going to be able to believe and process the stuff that we did, right? Like, they're not going to be able to process that. Because for them, they're just not like, hold on. Like, so they told y'all there's a respiratory virus that they weren't sure what it was. They weren't sure how well it spread. But, like, if you stayed, from 6 feet, you could somehow protect yourself. And people went crazy over that. Like people, like when they read that, when they get to that chapter, like it's gonna be like, and the fact that like, oh man, so you had doctors arguing against doctors, and you had chiropractors, and you had people in nursing, you had all these other like it's gonna be like obviously I'm glad I'm not gonna be around, but like it's gonna be wow. I wouldn't be surprised if there were freedoms already in the tree. No, it's just and again it's not a funny situation unless you officially try to take yourself fully out of it. But when you just kind of just read it and you're like, wow, like, yeah, we're really having a discussion on whether you should wear a mask around kids. Like that's like in a healthcare setting, right? Like I ain't even talking about when you go to the grocery store, when you do this. I'm giving the gray stare because I just know people are going to take it anyways. But like if you had to choose one setting to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be uncomfortable, I'm just going to wear a mask, you would think the one setting would be in the doctor's office, right? Or the healthcare facility. You would think. I don't know, man. Long COVID. I have had long COVID for 3 years. Went to the cardiologist Tuesday. Not one person in the mask beside me. And of course, when you are the odd person out, your brain, right? Especially if you're not really focused, right? Your brain starts playing tricks on you. You start saying like, okay, wow, no one's wearing a mask right now. Like, am I tripping right now? Am I? Am I like you really start kind of questioning yourself. And for those who are like, yeah, I don't care about none of that, like it's a short question, but you really start like looking like, wow, like no one's doing it, and the people who should be doing it aren't doing it. Let's see here. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I love y'all, man. Like y'all are just amazing. Y'all are amazing here, right? Especially because y'all just being able to kind of speak your truth, right? And again, like y'all can see some of the grays in my hair, right? Like I turned 40 in December, and I was talking to a good friend of mine when I was just talking about this younger. I'm not sure what letter they call y'all, Gen Z. I don't know what it is, right? But whoever the younger generation is, right? And I just talk about how, like, look how well they're able, look how much they speak up for themselves. And obviously, we're dealing with the gun issues right now. And, like, you can tell they are not going to stand for it. Like, I remember Columbine, right? Like, I remember Sandy Hook, right? Like, I remember these things, but I don't remember my generation being like, the second I turn 18, I'm voting you out. Like, that was not a thought. But these kids right here, like, they are counting down. All right, 18th birthday? Cool. Oh, that's what we doing? Okay. Mental note. We getting you up out of there. Like just a different energy, which I appreciate. Let me see. I work in health with pediatric special needs, and I'm dumbfounded. This. Again, you start really like, is this what we're doing here? Like, is like here? Like, again, it's just one of those things where, like, again, to be, again, and I don't even like calling it inconvenience, because like I said, I wear it so much. Like, even on I be on my way home, just driving a ways until it hits me like, oh, I still got my mask on. Like, it's just like for me, it's a part of the uniform. To the point where I'm the worst too, because I'll walk in because especially the mask is dirty, I throw it away, right? So I walk in, I tap my pockets, I'm like, oh, I got a mask, and then I start looking around, like, all right, I gotta get to that front desk over here, because I know masks stay at that front desk. I'm like, okay, no one's in my path. Boom, and then I beeline, and then I get a mask, like, because it just, like I said, I'm again, I'm unfortunately, I think my mind is flipped. I be looking at people weird when I can see their face now. Like, oh, wow, I can see your face. Like, it just be weird to me. Did you see the latest article about cognitive decline in mild COVID? Oh yeah, 100%. And obviously, yes, it's been 3 years. I don't think we scratched the surface on how bad COVID is, right? And I don't want to be hyperbolous. Again, I'm not here to spell doom and gloom. I just do not believe we know just how bad COVID is. Like, I just don't think it is, right? And then, I saw, because I get a lot of email articles that pop up in my email, and then they were talking about, multi-resistant fungi and everything else. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then, of course, I didn't watch the full. I just watched like a clips of it where, because I was at a conference where we actually had people talking about climate change. It was a health conference talking about climate change. And the crux of it was, hey, because of global warming, because of, the ice melting and everything else, we got some diseases that's been frozen, like literally frozen, that when they do come around, it's going to be a problem. Right. And again, and of course, obviously, again, we're not doom and gloom here, but this is just kind of the reality that it is. Like, we don't even know what some of these diseases are doing. I think COVID, again, fortunately, you can't really study anything until you have time, right? So, and there's a lot of people who are affected with it. So I think we're going to be doing so many kind of retrospective studies, like, hey, you know what? I'm seeing a correlation in this. I'm seeing a correlation in that. I'm seeing a correlation in that. Like, you'll start seeing that to the point where people, and mind you, like now, especially those who are the other side, they love when there's correlations with the vaccine. Like, oh my God, I'm seeing a correlation of people who gotten vaccinated get this, right? They never read the articles of the people who got COVID and got that blank. Like, that's never, for somehow, those articles never hit their desk. But let a retrospective article about association with COVID vaccine and, your fingernails turning blue, they're all over it. They're all over it, right? Just extremely disingenuous with that bunch. Yeah, no, it really is. It's a wild reality right now. Like I said, and again, and they told me, because the doctors were up there, because they were both infectious disease doctors, and they're like, yeah, if you want to go in a rabbit hole, like start looking up how the global warming, and they feel that whatever there's going to be in diseases. Oh, I'm in South Florida, Palm Beach County. They said that the diseases that are in these ice blocks are likely going to be respiratory in nature, right? Like, so, and again, something that's going to make COVID look kind of and so think about it, right? There's going to be a disease out here that's going to make COVID look like, it's just COVID, right? Like, that's just wild to see in and of itself. So you see the rates of transmission, fully vaccinated and boosted, just as high. Just as high as what? Is it just in high as those who are not vaccinated, or just so you can get clarification from that perspective there. And then so let's say the answer is those who are vaccinated, boosted, and then COVID responses, right, in the past year. In the past year. Oh, that 100%. But remember, when we think about that relation, right, we have to remember that we're not necessarily dealing with the same COVID virus, right? So, and that's why variants have always been such a problem. And again, we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum. But our biggest fears, especially in the beginning, was, as far as when we were like, hey, 70%, was we were trying to drive down the spread quickly, because we knew if we didn't drive down the spread quickly, the rate of variant creation was going to go up. And we knew that, and like, let's think about it from an OG perspective. We knew that, yeah, the OG, like, again, if you had the OG version of COVID-19, that thing has no chance against our booster. None whatsoever. Like, it's out of there, right? But we know that if you allow COVID to replicate, you're going to have these variants and the variant and the variant. And guess what? This variant, oh, that little vaccine you had, I'm good against that. Oh, that booster you had, I'm good against that. It's the same reason why the flu season is all about different variants of the flu. It's the same, and that's the reason why every time we have a new flu vaccine, it's a different brand version boost of the flu vaccine. Because we know if we try to give you that same flu vaccine from the old, like, it'd be a lost cause. We know it'd be a lost cause. So that's really the biggest issue. So you'll see a lot of people, especially when we talk about vaccination and boosted, you see a lot of people kind of clamoring for, hey, like, when's our next booster, right? Like, the problem is that the boosters are only effective for so long, right? Because again, obviously, remember, we're not playing on a normal playing field. The flu doesn't variant like the COVID variants, right? Just again, we're being plain lay English. Because the flu doesn't variant like the COVID variants, like, we're having to be a lot more aggressive in protecting ourselves, and masking and boosting and doing all those things there, because we know that, like, yeah, the variant of yesterday ain't gonna be the variant of today. Are masks still necessary in non-crowd places, store and lift? You know what? That's just a very good question, right? Because let me tell you, I don't necessarily wear a mask when I'm going to, like, the grocery store, especially in those well-ventilated, I'm in Publix. I don't know if they got Publix where you at. I'm in the Publix, right? So you got a big store, well-ventilated area. So you have a lot of people who are like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to the grocery store. I'm kind of going in. I'm going out, right? You know what? Is it necessary? We would like if you had it. But again, I don't wear it all the time. I walk in there, boom, boom, get my stuff and get out, right? It's because I know I'm going in a place that, like, all right, ventilation's there. I'm going to go and do my thing. I'm going to get up out of there. But, like, let's say if you're going to, again, a doctor's office where usually a little bit more confined, usually a little more closed, you're going in a room where it's kind of, like that. That's why the pediatrician's office and just healthcare settings in general is kind of, because, our just kind of that close-knit area, it's a little bit tougher. But I think, again, if you're walking out in the street, if you're walking out, you're going to the store, you're doing all these things there, and the areas are well ventilated, right? That's why a lot of the recommendations, especially for masking, got loose, right? Because they're saying, hey, if you're in these kind of big areas, big, well-ventilated spots, you know what? We like it, right? It's when it got tricky is when they start saying, well-ventilated spot or not, like, don't wear your mask, you're good. Like, that's where it got difficult, for most people. But you'll see a lot of people, again, and I don't fault them, right? And again, it's because I understand that we're living in a world where, yeah, you're gonna have some people who just not wearing the mask, right? You're gonna have some people who don't need to wear the mask anymore. You have some people who feel like they don't have to wear the mask anymore. All these different scenarios here. So you're gonna have people who are like, yeah, I'm not wearing that mask. Like, I'm just going to the grocery. I'm just getting some eggs. I ain't wearing that mask. Like, because they've already calculated, hey, I'm gonna deal with the ramifications of not wearing the mask, right? And everyone who goes in that store needs to deal with the ramifications of me also not wearing that mask as well. So that's kind of where it's kind of people kind of butted heads, because people want, like, hey, like, I can't get vaccinated. I can't get boosted, right? So you should wear a mask and social distance. Like, yeah, people are like, you know what? I'm not going to do that, right? Or let's say I did it, right? Let's say I'm one of those people, again, me. I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, double boosted, right? Team Moderna Mafia, right? I just want to go get them eggs, right? And if you know that your chances possibly getting it from, someone around us, let's say me, I'm walking around asymptomatic, you got to do what you need to do to protect yourself, right? And I'm going to do what I need to do to protect myself, right? Like, so it's kind of that happy median that sometimes is difficult to kind of have discussion, because you want to live in a world where, obviously we want to live in a world where no one has COVID, right? That ain't it, right? We want to live in a world where no one has COVID, but we don't live in that world no more. Like, that world is gone, right? So we just got to live in a world where COVID is here, and what are we going to do about it? Like, how can we protect ourselves? How can we protect our loved ones? How can we protect others, right? Like, those are the kind of decisions that kind of have to play, a role in our mind, right? And I just think it's one of those things where if you are, like I said, I think there's just certain settings where you just got to be like, hey, you know what? Mask has been great to cover my garlic breath. I love the mask. Shout out to the mask. Sometimes I don't even really shave like that no more, because I got a mask on. Nobody see my face anyway. Like, I go in planning the fact, like, oh, I wear a mask. Like, I don't need to shave no more. I'm good, right? So you could definitely, shout out to Team Moderna Mafia out here. And mind you, the second CDC says we gotta get boosted again, I'm running up to get boosted again, right? Like, I keep telling people, when I was getting my flu shots, no one was standing in line looking at me crazy when I got my flu shots. So when I get my COVID vaccines, get out the way too. Yeah. Problem is not wearing people where people have to go. Yeah, doctor's office. That's the point. Like, if I gotta go there, like, come on, protect yourself. Especially if I'm sick. Out here. So that's a good question. As far as Emerald's asking if she got her last one in October, when can she get the other one? Now, obviously, it depends, right? So it obviously location. It depends on boost. I would say roughly about 3 to 6 months, right? Now, I'm waiting for, again, CDC may say, because eventually they're going to say we need to get a COVID booster every year. But if you're wondering why they haven't got to that point yet, it's because literally, again, if you read, like, almost every 2 to 3 months, they have to talk about a new variant. So if every 2 months, hey, how's it going? If every 2 to 3 months they got to talk about a new variant, that kind of like, ooh, we got to go back. Like, because I wanted to do this boost, but we got this another variant. Let's see what this variant does. So when you're seeing kind of this rise and just the cases rise and everything else, it's really because, like, the variants is still kind of still. And remember, this is a worldwide issue. So let's say if we could put a fence around the United States, yeah, I think we'd be getting a boost pretty soon. But we don't have a fence around the United States. So even if the United States is doing good, right? Almost, because the United States is about close to 70% vaccinated who can be vaccinated. Right? But there's parts of the world who can't get vaccinated. And guess what? We're going over there too. And they're coming over here. Right? So when they get a variant, we get a variant. Right? Do I think the variants will ever slow down? Eventually, right? And by slowing down, I think obviously they're still developed because that's how viruses work. Again, remember, COVID wants to live as much as you want to live, right? And COVID knows for COVID to live, I got to keep making, a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there to keep living. So COVID wants to live just as much as you want to live. So because COVID wants to live just as much as you want to live, pan vaccine from Project Next Gen. I'm not necessarily familiar with that pan vaccine, but I'll definitely read up on that. And definitely I'll make a quick video with my response. Pan vaccine, I gotta remember that. So COVID wants to live just as much as you want to live. So because we know COVID wants to live just as much as you want to live, like COVID's going to do the things to evade our treatment, and we just got to keep making new treatments for it. So I think if we eventually get to a point where the rate is slowed down, where we like, all right, you know what, we can kind of guesstimate, because that's what we do with the flu now. We can kind of guesstimate, hey, you know what, based off what the flu was doing last year, we think it might try to do something like this, and guess what? We got a vaccine for that. So once we get to the point where, boom, like we got a vaccine for that, and we can kind of predict how COVID is doing it. Masking for life, masking forever, love it. Once we can get to that point here, then I think, all right, guys, let's do COVID boosters every year. Let's do COVID boosters every. Now, obviously, this is a very privileged position to be like COVID boosters every year, because guess what? You gotta afford it, and we already know that the government has pulled back all of the funding and everything else. So we know eventually it's going to get to a point where if you can't afford the COVID booster, it don't matter if it's available. Just like the flu is out here, right? But if you don't go to one of those places that typically give the flu vaccine out for free, right, it don't matter, right? So that's going to happen too with COVID, right? COVID's going to be hey, you know what? I can afford to go get Paxlovid. I can afford to go get a booster every year. I can afford to do those things there. And that's when it's going to be that's going to be a wild thing. Pan vaccine protect against new variants and other vaccines. I'll be very interested in hearing about that, especially other COVID variants. I'll be very interested to hear, read up on that. And I'll definitely do a video just kind of, get that on here. All right. So we are approaching the hour mark. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all joining for another great discussion. But it just had to find me. Shout out to Millie. Millie sent me that DM. She's like, hey, what do you think about this? And I listened to it and I said, I had to talk about this, because I knew I was gonna and then I saw the tag, and then I got a tag here, and then someone else sent me the video, and I said, I feel bad. Because I just knew it. I just hate how it came off. It just came off that this is a great question. How can white doctors help inspire trust in black patients? This is a very good question. So a couple things. I'll make it quick because I'm about to get out of here. So one, there has to be an acknowledgement of why black patients don't mess with vaccines, right? There has to be that acknowledgement, right? Obviously Tuskegee, obviously Henrietta Lacks, obviously medicine's history with purposely, or even worse, not purposely doing something, or purposely not doing something to black patients, right? That's just historical fact. And because that historical fact is bred into our medicine history, if you don't acknowledge that aspect of it, then you telling them that the mRNA vaccine's 99% safe, and that ain't gonna matter nothing to them, right? Because you got to get them to trust the medicine system as a general, and then you got to get them to trust that, hey, guess what? I know you don't want to deal with things like erectile dysfunction, early dementia, respiratory pulmonary fibrosis, and all these other things that could possibly occur if you happen to get it. And we're not even talking about dying, right? Because I think it's definitely a lose situation if you say, they could protect yourself from dying from COVID, right? Because all they're going to hear is 1 to 2%, right? And they automatically going to think they're not in the 1 to 2%, right? So you got to get away from that. But if you acknowledge, hey, I know why you don't trust the healthcare system, and I know why you may not trust these vaccines. But let me explain to you, obviously, one, that this ain't that right? Like this new process here is going to save lives because it has saved lives. This new process here that has no long-term harmful effects. It's not. It doesn't hang around your body and change your DNA or whatever. All the things that they were saying. Like once they kind of get that, and once they can trust you, and say, you know what, doc is not going to lead me wrong, then they'll eventually get it. But that, I think that's usually the big aspect of it, right? Like they have a very deep-seated trust, one, because they just kind of know their history. They know the history of medicine. They know what medicine has done to Black patients. They don't want to be a part of the new history. They don't, because some Black patients feel that, COVID is an experiment, right? And they don't want to be a part of the experiment, right? So once they understand, like, no, I can trust the person in front of me with my life, because that's what you're doing. I can trust the person in front of me with my life. Then they'll be like, okay, all right, doc, now tell me about this vaccine. But if you try to go with facts about the vaccine and the numbers and the safety, that's out of there. They gone. It's over their head. They're not, because mind you, I have trouble, right? Like I'm a Black physician and I still have trouble talking to them about the vaccine. So you can only imagine, right? If it's a white physician, a Hispanic physician, an Indian physician, like imagine if any other, like they're like, I don't know. What do you think the best vaccine? Obviously the one that, you can get, I think, obviously I am biased because I got the mRNA vaccines. I am not afraid of the necessary new technology associated with vaccines, and which mRNA vaccine is a newer technology. I think the risk and the side effect profiles because they are much better with the mRNA vaccines. But obviously, we gotta weigh kind of pros and cons as far as any medical history that may preclude you not to be able to get the mRNA vaccines, that say, all right, I got to get a vector vaccine like Johnson & Johnson, or a nucleic acid vaccine like the Novartis one. So it's just kind of pros and cons. But if you can, I'm Moderna Mafia, right? And that's where covers new variants. Moderna, Pfizer, like that. That's the name of the game for me. All right, I'm out of here. Y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great night. I'm gonna see you guys next week.